Happy to go, Brian. Let's kick it off.
Yeah.
Welcome everybody to this digital customer experience stream. It's not all digital, so maybe we can delete the digital part. It's called customer experience, but obviously we'll talk about that for the next two chapters. We will try to make it as much as interactive as possible. We all been in these boring Zoom calls for the last 3 months. We're actually happy to do this on a new platform, which doesn't give us the whole environment of those Zoom calls, which are, not that the most interactive parts here. So I'm happy to have you here. Make yourself at home. Stupid joke, because we're all sitting at home probably, but yeah, that's the case. As a sort of a warming up, guys, we thought it was a good idea to just frame your thoughts a little bit on customer experience. We all know it's everything and nothing at the same time. We'll dive into that in a second. Before we go to the agenda, what's for your personally, what is in one word that comes to mind when you think about customer experience? And just leave it in the chat. Could be everything, could be nothing, but it's just good to frame it, because for some people it's UX and only UX. If you talk about it with a retailer, it's probably store. If you talk about it with an advertising agency, it's probably an app. So it's good to frame that a little bit. So feel free for the next few seconds to just put it in the chat while we go to the agenda and try to make you comfortable with our content. Andrew says brand love, or not.
Fair enough.
Fair enough, right? I think that's the most important part, right? Just to frame it and to make sure you can also bring it to tangible results. But obviously, Brian will talk about that later.
Yeah.
Before we dive into the content, let's take a few minutes to a bit of an introduction, guys, that you know who you're talking to or looking to or chatting to. Brian, can I invite you to do an introduction?
Yeah, of course. Hi, everybody. My name is Brian. I've been about 25 years now in looking after operations, mainly in retail operations. So looking at that bit of how you take and designed experience or a designed system, and then how do you actually get people trained up to operate it, and then how do you monitor and continually evolve that. So I've worked for Unilever at the moment. Before that, I was 10 years with Starbucks, both in company owned and in their partner brands. And before that, I was with Pret a Manger, and I've done some work with Google and Laplace as well. So mainly in physical retail, but now at Unilever, it's a little bit more across the digital space as well, as everything needs to be these days.
Great. So yeah, just a few words about me. So I started working in a store, became store manager when I was about 20 at Suit Supply. So the store was literally the basic for everything for me. From Suit Supply, I went to Capgemini as a consultant for retail and CRM. Don't be a consultant too long, otherwise you can only make slides. From Capgemini, I worked for Jumbo supermarkets in the Netherlands. I was their first customer experience manager. And from Jumbo, a couple of years later, I transferred to Dollar Shave Club, Unilever, based now. And since 2 years, I started my own agency, where I'll talk a little bit about more in a second. The agenda of today is, we have 1.5 hours. We're not going to dive into 40 minutes keynotes. We really want to make it interactive. First of all, I will talk about how to reconnect with your customers in the world of COVID-19. We have time for interactions. If you have questions, just let us know through the chat. Really happy to see that. Afterwards, Brian will talk about how to ensure consistent but evolving way of working in terms of experience. See it for me as a sort of a trend thing, and Brian will take it into the execution part in terms of how that actually will look like. That makes us a great combination for today. Just a quick introduction about who we are. We are the Customer Experience Agency. We're a small group of people in Amsterdam, with divided into several different groups of people working on the customer experience assignments, not just for small brands, which we love to do, because literally the smaller, the better. We work about a few different models, which I will show you today. Our T6A model is built on customer design thinking. So everything we do with our customers will tie it up to their vision. focused on faces, focused on moments, which is very, very important, especially if you take it to customers as well. We talk about content, which is obviously key these days. I will talk more about that in a minute. We talk about touch points and requirements. So we do touch all disciplines here. So we have designers to actually make things. We have management consultants to create slides. I'm joking, but we do need a sort of a business thinking on how we operate, right? Otherwise, it keeps on a sort of an advertising or app hallucination. It should be tied back to that vision. We have CX managers, so a first line of CX manager actually did it themselves. So pragmatic approach is very, very important. And we have a lot of brand marketeers who actually can create content. Well, 4 focus areas. And again, this is not a sponsor talk. This comes back to all the things I'm going to discuss in the next 12 minutes. We have customer experience strategy. We have partner experience strategy, which is super important, which I'll talk about in a second. Customer service design and performance marketing. One big question is always very important, which we have like literally tied up to our office, is does the customer create the journey or does the journey create the customer? That's sort of a, sorry to say, sort of a mind fuck, right? Because from an organization perspective, we think that we have our reality about our consumers, customers, people, human, or whatever. But from a human perspective, it's always different. The question is, I mean, specifically this twist in this question is very, very important about everything what we do. Today, we're going to talk about how to reconnect with your customers in the world of COVID-19. And is it super, super, super different? Maybe not. Does it accelerate because of the whole COVID-19? Absolutely. And not just for a month, but maybe for years, right? So all the plans we had on our table is getting accelerated very, very, very quickly. One thing's for sure, continue with business usual. Nothing will be the same after COVID-19. So even if you're a store, if you're in banking services, if you're in finance, if you're a manufacturer, only looking from a B2B, from a B2C perspective, everything will be accelerated. So nothing will be the same. Customer experience thinking for companies has moved into this focus, whether it's B2B or B2C. And just to frame customer experience a little bit, we can use a lot of different frameworks in here, but I always say, take it to real life, right? If you want to interact with people, whether it's B2B or B2C, you have to interact, you have to talk, right? You have to understand what people are talking about, and you have to listen. And especially that listening part to learn is very, very important. And you can plot all your departments, whether it's only for interact, whether, for example, marketing should be part of listening. These 3 steps for us are very much key in everything what we do, whether it's a marketing campaign, whether it's an app, or it's an omnichannel strategy for a client. And this is maybe the best slide of the whole presentation. You literally see 9 people, 9 different people, 9 different behaviors. If you compare, for example, Lucy, 26, with Carrie, 19, it's a completely different way of absorbing, consuming media, right? If you look at Jack, he's 3 years old, but already spent more time on TikTok. He doesn't know YouTube. If you look at the growth of TikTok, that's an example how quickly people are consuming media differently, right? TikTok went from 300,000 to 3.5 million in the Netherlands over 3 months. So what you should do with TikTok, right? So every little thing in these different ways of absorbing retail, absorbing brands, and are completely different. And that's how we try to approach the world. Pretty dynamic as well. Talking about COVID, and again, if you have questions, put it in the chat. We have a lot of time afterwards, also after the presentation of Brian, to just have that conversation. We can bring you up in the stage. We only have place for 10 people, but you can just raise your hands afterwards. We can just have that discussion, because I think really that's there's the value, instead of just showing some great design slides. 4 mental phases that people are going through during the pandemic. That's what we saw and what we learned from research in China and South Korea specifically. Why South Korea? Because it's one of the most connected areas in the world. Top 3 together with Switzerland and Netherlands in terms of internet penetration. So we really learned there what to do moving forward. Fear zone, just take a couple of things. People don't know what's going to happen. I complain. We really see an increase of 15% to a lot of FMCG brands in terms of customer service. People just needed some contact. They wanted to define or just wanted to be sure about products. They're really reaching out there. Talk about that in a second. The learning zone, right? I evaluate information before spreading something false. People thought more about fake news than ever before. They actually experienced them themselves, right? And then these are basically now the most important ones, the growth zone and the action zone. So what are we going to do? And that's the question we have, right? How do we people actually going to absorb everything what was happening for the last couple of months in their consumer behavior, in their brand behavior and stuff like that? So for the next couple of minutes, I have two observations, what we saw with our team and our clients. I have one example of what we did ourselves based on all the learnings. I have 6 trends. It's mainly focused on retail, but as Brian and I already talked about earlier, whether you're working on smart maintaining, whether you're doing a smart home solution, whether you're finance, I think the store principle, and whether it's obviously offline, online, omnichannel, whatsoever, is very important, right? Connecting with your consumer, whether you're coming from B2B or B2C. Okay, integrity is key to every relationship. So 2 observations. Integrity, obviously, take it to real life. That's why I show it the whole interact, understand, listen approach, right? Integrity is key. Empathy. Brands that communicate how they can actually help the consumer have been shown to have the greater potential of building stronger long-term brand power within the market. I know you can read. Sorry for reading it up. A very funny thing to see when COVID started is that all the brands started to email their clients about, hey, this is our approach about COVID-19. Literally nobody was waiting for that. So that's really, really the wrong approach. So empathy there is helping each other out rather than making a sale. It's very interesting to see that everybody was following that approach. Resolution. You see a lot of museas doing different approaches. Traditional brick and mortar source companies such as museas, again. So they do different things rather than just go to the show. There's also obviously I was going to the museums, Rijksmuseum last week, and there was only a slot of 2 hours. So when I was in the car, my Uber to the Rijksmuseum, I was like, okay, you know what? I'm already going to download the app to have a look on what's out there. So you're being pushed on the whole pre-journey to actually go to the service or go to the store. Facilitate that. Time and effort. Very important. If I have a question, give me an answer. It's great to talk about chatbots and all these innovations, but if you're not giving me an answer within an hour or within 3 or 4 minutes, it doesn't help. Tangible examples, customer service. Well, like I said before, we did talk a lot about all these innovations, but if you not make sure that your customer service is foundational, so that answer within a couple of seconds, you're out. Online service, again, create complementary service touchpoints. Maybe that app of Rijksmuseum is being downloaded more last 4 weeks than the last 2 years. So people are in need of that. And also engaging dialogue, always on. Smart content creation there is very, very important. Great to make beautiful brand videos, but your FAQ page is getting more views these days than your billboard. So use these brand manuals also to actually help people. The other observation, partner experience. And I can't talk enough about partner experience for the last couple of months. People get sick of it, but it's really, really, really important. Biggest example is talking to an H&M designer of his new maintained website. Was super, super happy with the whole flow. But the reality was, talking with him and doing some research, is that about 80% of the people who bought something at H&M stores did eventually landed in this shitty DHL or local postal website, which was not responsive, looking at all the time because they needed the dress or the suit for a couple of days. If you're not in control of your partner experience, you're not in control of your customer experience. So this is really one we'll foresee working on more and more, especially when you talk about trust, especially if you talk about friction, but also if you talk about the whole marketplace. And of course, the marketplace is sort of the new CX, right? Everybody's talking to marketplace. Make it very, very simple. We did an assignment for a concert hall in Amsterdam. You buy your ticket from an artist on the website of the concert hall. You go to the concert hall, park your car at a Q Park garage. You can't pay by Ideal or you can't pay by Apple Pay. You have so many different partners within your whole environment that it's really, really trustworthy. It's really, really necessary to talk with them and make sure that you engage with them, not just from a talking perspective, but also from an IT perspective. So data collaboration here is very, very important. I buy something at Zalando. I buy a shoe from Adidas on Zalando, and I return to the side of Adidas. They don't recognize me. They don't know I already bought that shoe. I know it's very, very complex to think about that Zalando and Adidas will share their data stack and can recognize customers themselves. But can you imagine what happens if that would be the case? Working for Dollar Shave Club 2 years ago, we saw that Gillette was having a subscription-based service on Amazon. So Amazon will not provide Gillette with data information. But what happens if that would be the case, right? Are you happy that you just sell something, or are you happy just provide your customer in their lifetime value? And then map ecosystems. We really moving forward from journeys to ecosystems. If you don't map your ecosystem, you have no clue what your customer is about. And then the third one, maybe the hardest one, is become best friends with IT. All your plans that you would love to achieve are nothing without being friends with IT, right? Otherwise, it's kept on being a hallucination in a little silo. And especially knowing that IT is also in this big migration, planning 2, 3, 4 years ahead. And if you have a great idea from a business perspective, want to put it in, I mean, it's quite hard, right? To just shuffle that in where it's needed if your IT department is already working on a 4-year plan. Cool. Put it into practice. We all know these consultants with all these great slides. What we did last 7 months is put all our learnings together and do it ourselves. So what we did is we was looking for a category that needed some experience, and applied all the lessons we had. So we come up with Crazy About Eggs. An egg experience is quite shitty, right? You walk into a store, you see all these gray boxes, it's quite smelly, you don't know what to choose, you don't know where it's coming from. Is it a brown egg? Is it a white egg? You have no idea. So what we literally did here with all the lessons from our clients and research is redefine that whole experience. So we started with great boxes, great packaging, which is bio-based, compostable packaging. If you just literally leave that in water for a week, it's gone. We start about redefining the process. Where's the egg actually coming from? Who's doing that? I wrote an article a year ago about this feather you see in the egg packages. That was the only marketing they did. So we really got, we literally had nights that we were like, what? How is that possible? We literally eat 270 eggs a year, but we don't know where it's coming from. We had cameras in supermarkets in the Netherlands in the egg lane, and we literally saw everybody like chickens taking that package, and of course the supermarkets put everything through each other. So it's so funny to see that it's not. I love the avocado show, and I think but you eat an egg almost every day. So, but we have no clue. So what we did is we redefined the process, came up with compostable packaging. We really needed to have transparency. So we have a QR code at the wobblers in the store, but also in the packaging where you actually can see 24/7 how chicken in the supermarket that's walking actually outside. We created some feedback loops with our dynamic personas, but we also had contact with our farmers and listened to the farmers. And the farmers said, you know what, guys, it's very hard for me to sell this because their margin is quite low. So we build a platform for the farmers to pick and collect the eggs for the packing stations. We're creating websites for the farmers. We create vending machines for the farmers to actually have their D2C strategy there. And we have content partnerships in return for that. This is just an example of how we try to humanize the chicken, try to digitize the experience, and trying to literally live into a consumer to make things better. And again, it's not to show off, it's just to share and to make sure that we also bring it to life. And this helps us to give more pragmatic and tangible advice. So there's a striking way in which individuals, so we have a few people, let's say half the people say, you know what, COVID-19, it's great, it will change, but eventually it will go back to normal, right? The other half see ourselves moving forward into the future. It's your decision on how you actually want to, bring this to life. And going to the 6 trends, what we see a lot is the aisles, right? We all see these silly stickers on the floor that people need to go through. What we predict is that these adaptations to our social environments are here to stay. We don't want to go into a store anymore with 400 people at the same time. So people are already collecting their moment to go. Sometimes I say to people like, hey, yeah, I was in the store, it's so busy. No, it's not busy. I always go in the morning at between 8 and 9. And so people already collecting more and more times to go to a store. Same for obviously fashion retail and stuff like that. You don't want to be there anymore. It's Saturday, 4 o'clock when it's super, super busy. So people are going to be more selective on when, where, and how they're going to achieve that. Cashless societies. We literally got forced into buying cashless, right? Even older people. So there's a huge bunch of people who now get more and more comfortable on buying cashless. And for me, it's the same. I use I'm sort of this super bearded hipster in Amsterdam. I use Apple Pay all the time, and I walk out the door without wallet. It's very awkward, but it happens. It's not. I'm not talking about myself or my hipster, let's say, way of stream, but also older people are getting used to it. And then this one is very, very interesting for me: the queuing experience. I'm not going to say I'm going to set up a queuing experience agency tomorrow, but the queue is a reality. Whether they want it or not, whether it's offline or online, whether it's for an event that people have to queue up for, or for the supermarket, people are standing in the line for your store. What are you going to do? Do you still have your shitty do you still have your shitty Wi-Fi, or is that a very important source of getting information, right? So, for example, push notification strategies and appointment lifestyle will become the new norm. We talk a lot with news media these days. And I don't want to have 5 the same push notifications from the same news medias. But again, put it back to the store. People are waiting. What are they going to do? So your app or all these other innovations that you started with a couple of years ago is getting a completely new normal. Shipping more means design of better packaging. So packaging is super, super important, right? So we all have a reality of packaging and experience. But if you look at this, the day-to-day TNT truck, it's all packed up, right? So what happens if people are buying more and more online, and especially pushed by COVID-19, and they're opening up the packaging? Is that a sort of an experience? Can you compare that with the offline experience? A great example is the other way around. Offline pickup is normally brought into a closed box. What happens if you bring that into a transparent box, so that actually in-store people can actually sell more with that, right? So whether it's online store or offline store, packaging is very, very, very important. Brands are moving quickly from stores to live stream. So live stream is very, very important. TikTok will start next week with live streams. Just be part of the conversation. We do it right now as well. Live is always better than just a brand video. Louis Vuitton collaborated with the Lit Red Book in China. Obviously, China is a bit ahead of us in terms of live store, but you really see that the awkwardness of being live, the awkwardness of showing your, in my case, fat face in the middle of the screen is getting less, because that's basically the only quick way to interact with people. It's almost like awkward if you don't want to FaceTime anymore, right? Especially if you look at children. So stores will limit the number of customers allowed. So coming back from the queuing experience, coming back from all these in-store tickets, or stickers or whatsoever, stores will limit the number of customers allowed, because they see now they can only bring a level of service to the people if they have time. So again, these precious moments, I'm not sure how that is in other branches, but for example, fashion retail, you see Thursday evening in the Netherlands is a buying evening, and Saturday is always busy. You make your turnover 35% between Thursday 5 to 8 and Saturday 3 to 5. That will change. That will change. So that also has a big effect on the operation of the store. So bring it all together. Our biggest learning of everything was we have to say goodbye to the journey, because there's no journey anymore. We don't have the luxury anymore as a brand, as a retailer, to define a journey. People already did what they wanted to do, but now push to COVID-19 and push to the behavior of it, every single step within the journey can have every single reason. Acquisition could happen just as easily in customer service as it does on your Facebook ads. One thing's for sure, you have to act, you have to interact, you have to understand, and you have to listen. Over to Brian.
Hi, thanks very much. So hopefully this will work, so we'll give it a try.
Yeah, of course. And guys, if you have any questions, no worries, let us know.
So, Jeroen, can you see that?
I can't see your screen. Let me stop sharing. Maybe that will work. Okay.
with me a second, everybody. Sorry about this. Okay, I think that's got it.
That's good. And you, for the people are tuning in, you can click twice to maximize the video, as it says. Perfect.
So, thank you very much, Jeroen. It was really, really, really interesting. So my name is Brian, and what I'd like to take you through now is a little bit of kind of following on from what Jeroen is talking about. So Jeroen and his team are fantastic at designing these wonderful customer experiences. And what I'd like to talk a little bit about now is what happens with that experience afterwards. So how do we take these incredible designs, execute these amazing experiences, either digitally or physically, but then what do we do to maintain that customer experience? Because it is now about a customer experience. Even if you are using a website, you may get stuck, and then how do you fix things? So that connection with somebody online, is it somebody that's a bot that is very infuriating, that you have a terrible experience in, or is it a real human being that can answer your questions immediately? Again, down to the traditional store is where I think most of us are comfortable. I think it's the easiest place to visualize stuff. So I'll kind of stay there for now, but I think a lot of these themes are also applicable to the digital world as well, because now I think everything is going to be interconnected. So really what I want to talk about is these four key parts of it, which is about the people that create this experience. What is the new normal? You know, as Jeroen's talked about, COVID's given everybody a bit of a shake and a bit of a kick up the bum. That was probably coming for a while. Things have already been moving this way for a long time now, with the increase in the price of real estate, with the efficiency of design, with the efficiency of delivery systems, the speed of internet. All of this stuff has been moving this way for a while now. But you also see some companies now also having this physical experience to back up their online presence. And I think Apple are the kings of that at the moment with the Apple stores. So how that will continue, it's being ready for that. But also then action planning, what do you do? How do you check that everything is working? You know, rather than just trust the data that comes through, as is anybody actually going through the customer experience online and offline? And then the rhythm and routine. How do we take advantage of opportunities as they arise, not have this static systems or static design that can't be changed as the customer changes? Because COVID happened very, very quickly. If you think of the changes we've made just in the last 3 months, what's the next COVID? Because one thing's for sure is the world never stops moving and there's always a drama somewhere. So how can we be nimble and lean and react to that quickly, as a lot of organizations have done over the last few months? So the key to a lot of this stuff is the people. So here is an example for one of the stores that we have in Unilever. This is a brand called St. Ives, which is a skin cleansing brand. It's in the UK and in the US. And what we created was a mixing bar, a little bit like a cocktail bar in New York, where customers could come in and they could mix their different kinds of fruit and different ingredients and waters to create their own skin cleansing products. But all in the background of all of this is all of the data that's being collected. So they were seeing what customers were choosing, which were not working when they mixed them, and which had a great reaction to the customers and which customers came back. That led to them actually launching several branded products because they already had done their product research from the store, which increased their sales dramatically. But also they used the upstairs in this store then as also a packing and shipping, because you've wasted real estate space upstairs and downstairs in a lot of these units. You have to rent the whole space. So then it's how they could also have utilizing the downtime early in the mornings and in the evenings when there was time to then pack and ship all these products out. But the key to all of this then is your brand ambassadors. Are the people that are working in your store connected to your brand? And some organizations do this absolutely fantastically, but your people are your experience, and that also goes for online. So however a customer reacts with a system and how they're dealt with when it doesn't work makes them loyal or not. But also then how engaged is your employees with your product? Do they like working there? Because if they don't, your experience is probably going to show that as well. Particularly, you know, if the system's not working very well and your employees like, oh, this always happens. it's not a great customer experience. So how do we get people passionate about the brand? What's your employer branding like? And how do we really make people passionate about working there? And also then setting the expectations for the teams there. So when people show up to work, they know what's expected of them, but also we know what to expect for people. I don't think anybody gets up and says, today I'm going to do a bad day in work, but stuff happens and we need to understand what it is that are causing people to make the decisions that they're making. And blame ourselves and look at ourselves on what in the design of the system has made somebody prioritize something else than we were expecting. So obviously we have this new normal now where COVID's happened. Our beautiful stores, this is Piccadilly Circus in London, is not going to have the same footfall of tourists that's potentially it would have had 12 months ago when we opened these beautiful stores. So this is Grom, it's an Italian gelato brand, and they've moved a significant amount of their business now to online. And even this store, as you can see, it has pickup here, where a lot of the customers can place their orders online before they enter the store, and then their gelato is held in a case ready for them to pick up, so they don't have to have that queuing experience. And then we have slots that are available in there for people to book in, and then after so many slots it's full. But they've also got in there some augmented reality where people can walk in the store and they can see where the fruit is grown that makes the gelato. And there's a lot of interesting things happening where your digital and physical stores are now just blurring together as one experience. But they have one store in the UK and that's all they need. It's just to have that brand presence that then they can create a really big experience for the customer with. And really what we need to understand is when we create these incredible experiences, we've designed this fantastic store, it's then checking, is this working? So really going in and setting the expectations with the team on what they should be focusing on, or the team setting expectations back to us saying, look, you're letting me down and this is what a customer wants and we're just not providing it. So having that two-way communication, looking at where the results are coming from. Sometimes they're coming from surprising places that we imagine our hero product to be one product and then it turns out to be something completely different, but taking the time to understand the why. Compliance, it's never been more important. I think now with the whole COVID thing, hygiene is going to be so important. Sanitizing stations, touch screens, I think are going to be a big problem. I have a problem with McDonald's touch screens and things like that anyway, but now, how will they automatically get sanitized? Because I don't want to touch a screen that I don't know when the last time it's been cleaned, and etc. Also, how do we recognize success and recognize when you have a good experience? Even that online experience can be fantastic from some people in there. And then these balanced scorecards, which I'll talk a little bit about later on, but making sure that we're not just measuring qualitative data, but we're also measuring quantitative data, and we put the two things overlaid so we can understand the why we're getting the results we're getting. And then how do you do this? It's great that I talk about all this stuff, but then how do we do it? And the base thing is to do stuff simple. So get a piece of paper, write down what your key standards are, look at what the stuff that's important. Are you going to get put in jail for if it doesn't work? And then just go through the basics. Are the lights on? Then look through your brand standards. Look at the training effectiveness. Everybody should have been trained. Are they trained? Just check those things out. You have an operational manual for how the customer experience should look like. Is it working? And don't get too expensive and organized at the beginning. Just start with paper and weigh the things that are important to you on it. So if something's key, then score a 10. If something is just a hygiene thing, then just put it as a 1. But have those really important brand standards or compliance issues heavily weighted so you can get a clear picture of what's happening in your units. And then who does that? So who checks the checker? If you're checking yourself, are you listening to your own voice? But if you're using somebody else, how do you ensure that they are either measuring it from a customer point of view or they understand your business? There's a lot of third parties out there that can do that. There's some amazing software, pretty inexpensive, and there's a lot of the gig economy out there. But the key thing is to get help. So there's companies out there like Rumler and Be My Eye, which will do customer experience visits for you using students or however you want to do it. Be My Eye is using a little bit more professionals to do it. But then there's also these platforms where they will help you design these audits and checklists, etc. And then there's companies like Food Alert who are industry experts. And I think every industry has these companies out there that will help you. They will review your business for you and help you do those steps. But the main thing is don't be afraid to look for help and get help, because it can save you a lot of time and pain going forward. And then from that, now we know what's wrong. How do we fix it? This is a car-to-door store. This one is from Lisbon. Actually, this one is from Paris, actually. And car-to-door is a mainly a business that's seen in supermarkets around the world. And we were pivoting the brand to make the brand seen as more of a dessert brand, but also focusing the brand into a lot of restaurants. So this was done to showcase a lot of how the products could be used with high-end restaurants. And we partnered with famous chefs to design macarons and macaron recipes using the unique products that they sold there. So the action planning, generally, I would say 90% of the time, training is normally the answer when you have a problem that you discover. But the key is, how do you do it? What order do you do it in? What is your priority? What are you going to tackle first? It should be pretty obvious, but the compliance stuff and the brand damaging things need to come at the top. Who does it? Do they have the capability to do it? Do they have the time, the resources? Understanding, are they the right person to do this? Will they be accepted by the IT guys or the store people to do this? And then how do you check up to make sure that this has actually happened? And there's a lot of great digital tools that will track all of this stuff down for you. And again, if it is something that is serious, it's important to have that trail that shows that you have done something and that things are in progress, to make sure that things are working correctly. And then lastly, rhythm and routine. So how do we, now that we've got our system running smoothly, we've got the right people there, they're doing a great job, everybody's very happy, how do we keep it? Because I pointed out earlier on, normal doesn't stay normal for very long. There's always something else around the corner. So how do we make sure that we manage this? So this is our Ben & Jerry's store in the UK. So this is in Soho. Which I think a lot of people are aware of the brand, but it's really a brand that focuses a lot on social justice. And it's a place that people come to work because they really connect with the brand, and they do an amazing job at employer branding, and how even the CEO, he's an incredible guy, and how they talk about the brand. And also being part of Unilever, which is a large multinational, how they're not afraid to break from what the company says and go out and do their own things. They were one of the first companies to pull the Facebook advertising. A lot have followed since, but these are known for being bold in how they communicate with customers. And it's an amazing company to have the privilege to work with. So the cycles of excellence. So when do we do this? How often should we do it? Who does it? This should all be built into a cycle that everything should connect with everybody. There should be daily rituals inside the stores for the teams that work there. There should be weekly check-ins from management with those teams. There should be monthly check-ins with the managers, with their supervisor, and they should all build together. And generally, I'm skipping to the end of it, but everything should be linked to the P&L. This has to be measurable, otherwise it's not sustainable. And your qualitative and quantitative data will really show the benefits of doing this, because you can have a store that on paper is doing really, really, really well, but then you can look at the qualitative data and you can see that actually the store is really poor. The staff are not trained, but they're still doing really well. It shows you that there's actually huge opportunities in those stores. So it also means that you don't just accept what's happening. It should be part of a balanced scorecard, which looks at everything that's going on in the business, not just what's happening in the digital part, but also in the physical retail. What are customers saying? Do we have the right products? Where's the opportunities? Where's our next funnel innovation coming from? How are we feeding the funnel? And then how does this information cascade through the organization rather than just stay linked to that one unit or one experience, because you find that we work in silos a lot and your solution could actually be applicable for several other things. So making sure that information and solutions are readily available. And again, I'll mention it again, it's got to make sense and be linked to the P&L that this stuff pays off. Otherwise, the finance guy is going to be questioning why you're doing this at all. And then finally, just wanted to show you like a quick idea of how this would look as a cycle. So your perfect store experience is driven by a perfect support process. And when I mean perfect store, I mean also perfect online store. The digital platform is also, in my opinion, a store. Really clear contractual terms and operational standards that how you operate that. So even with your vendors or your third parties that are hosting your platforms, how they should be doing that. The training that's given the guys that work in the store needs to be trackable and tracked so that you understand where everybody is with this stuff. Having audits that support what's happening in the stores, feeding back into those training platforms. So if we see gaps, we're plugging them. And really then following this loop regularly, structured meetings that are discussing your KPIs, your P&Ls, your financial stuff. So this cycle needs to be happening regularly, and there's a lot of tools out there that can enable you to do this in quite a cost-effective way now. This has become a really big business for a lot of companies, so it doesn't mean you have to do this all yourself from scratch. You can get a lot of help pretty easily and surprisingly inexpensive. So just want to thank you for your time. I think Jeroen and I are going to have a little questions now and talk about this a little bit more, but we'll be sharing our contact details a little bit more. But thank you for your time.
Great. And if you have any questions, guys, please put it in the chat or raise your hands. You can actually put even more comfy to get your showing you in your pajamas. No, just kidding. Just raise your hand if you want to have a question. I have a question for you, Brian. Working for Starbucks for a couple of years ago, you probably saw already that Starbucks announced, I believe last Wednesday, that will speed up its new store development with expansion of drive-through and Starbucks pickup formats. I mean, Starbucks have so many stores. What in the hell they need to do after this whole COVID-19 part? Is it about efficiency? Is it about digital? What do you think the best way would, for Starbucks moving forward after COVID? With so many stores?
I think it's a bit of both. I think with Starbucks, nobody's going to hang around for a coffee. And also the danger with putting in something like a pickup point is unless it's quick, it's not going to work very well. And Starbucks' unique thing is you get your coffee the way you want it. So making sure that you get that perfect drink every time quickly, you need to be super efficient. And they have some great digital platforms in the back end. So when you order your drink on the app, that's getting sent directly to the store using Oracle, actually. I think there's somebody from Oracle on here. And it actually not only shows the guys in the store what the beverage is, but it actually shows them how to make that beverage. So it's using a lot of information in the back end to create it, but it's got to be fast. But also don't forget, smaller format stores are cheaper to operate. So if I've got a cafe with lots of seating, I'm paying for that seating for someone to sit in. They've already bought their drink. So if you buy your drink and you don't sit in my cafe, my rent is a lot less. My fixed costs are a lot less. Also, I need less staff. I don't need someone to boss tables. So there's a lot of efficiency in this as well. So I think it's win-win for Starbucks. My question is, how do they keep that great experience for the customer, and how do they keep it emotional? Because Starbucks has always been, the bit where they go, "Hey, Jeroen, good to see you again, and here's your drink," and maybe some funny message on the cup. And how do they keep that human connection? It's going to be interesting to see.
Is it true that they actually? I saw something about that last week on Instagram. Is it true that they actually write your name different to hit more media with Instagram and stuff like that? Because people always reposting the photo than when your name is spelled differently.
I think, to be honest, it depends on the person doing it, but it's really hard to hear what people say.
Yeah, of
And
course.
even my name, the amount of times I'm called Brain, um, just one or two letters switched and that's it. So I think it's an easy mistake to make, but definitely I've seen some incredible cartoons and works of art that people do on the
It's crazy,
cups.
right? So you mentioned compliance in your presentation. For me, compliance is like literally sort of a dark area. Never, of course, we all have to deal with it. But if you talk about compliance so passionately as you did, how in the world would can we innovate on compliance? Is that should that be part of our work stream? Should it be part of our execution stream? Can you elaborate a little bit more on that? How that could affect us from a bad way, but also affect us on a very positive way?
I think the key is don't fight it. I think it's like any of these rules that you have to adhere to, even though at first they don't make sense. If you fight them, you're never going to win. So it's
Oh,
more just trying to understand how you can take that you're being asked to do and weave it in a positive way to your teams and how you do things. Generally, you've just got to make it part of your way of working. What I've done in a lot of stores now is using technology to take the pain out of it. So
hmm,
there's a lot of sensor technology that you can put in that links to cloud monitoring systems where now the human doesn't have to go and check the temperature of the meat or the freezers or whatever.
yeah,
There's a
smart maintenance.
code
Yeah,
already in there that's binging it every couple of minutes to the cloud and setting an alarm off if it's not right. I've seen where they're using mobile phones and watches to monitor if the staff are moving. So if they're not moving, it sets off an alarm to say, hey, there's something may not be right here to help people that are lone working. So there's a lot of things where you can use technology to make the compliance easier. It doesn't
yeah.
have to be hard.
Interesting. We've got a question from Martijn. Should compliance move from a no can do legal first perspective to a what we can do opportunity perspective?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's the key bit is you can't change it. It's going to take a long time to change these things, but it's more how do we do this and how do we do it quickly and turn it to an advantage because
Yeah.
generally this stuff is there for a reason. Hope that answers
Not
your question.
yeah, it's a journey for me actually. I just have to learn more about it to actually ensure what it could be. What could be the good thing about it to maintain. What could be the bad thing about it? Another question. I think that's very. Go ahead. Sorry.
I think building it into your original design as well. So just making sure that you have an
Yeah, go or
expert.
no go moments there to just check with them rather than just finalize and say, hey guys, we also need to go to compliance when it's finished, for example.
Yeah, it's exactly because I think a lot of the time legal get involved far too late in projects. When actually, if they were involved upfront or HR or whatever, you could save
Yeah.
yourself a lot. I know it's not exciting, but it'll
No, no,
save
no.
you a
It's
lot.
it's you're right, right? We all know we have like the defensive departments within the company, and we have more the offensive departments. And if you talk about the more defense department, I'm not hoping that a lot of finance office controllers are in this call, but they always have the thing like you should come earlier. So maybe the lesson for me is okay, make sure they're part of the process, as you said, right? So they feel
But
engaged. They can.
there is something you can do where we have to put CCTV cameras, for example, into all of our stores as part of compliance. It was just from an insurance point of view in case anything went
Yeah,
wrong. But there are CCTV cameras that you can now hook up to things like a Cisco system, where it now can act as a traffic counter. It can monitor hotspots inside your stores. It can look at what your conversion rate is from people passing on the
yeah,
street to entering your store. So there's a lot of times where you can take something that's originally a pain in the ass compliance expense
yeah.
and turn it into an opportunity to actually increase sales.
I have the $1 million question for you. So hold tight. You worked for Unilever. You're working for Unilever already for a long time, but also worked for Starbucks, direct to consumer. Worked for the license holder Starbucks. I worked for Dollar Shave Club, as you know. Unilever bought Dollar Shave Club. We're fighting this whole war basically from manufacturers trying to become brands, brands trying to act like retailers, FMCG players trying to act like stores, etc., etc. Why is it so hard for all these different parties to interact with clients, and especially working together. Example, working for Jumbo as customer experience manager, I had my customers going to the service desk with their complaints. At the same time, we have at a shampoo bottle from Andrelon, a replying number. So even the feedback loop of the clients came into all these different sort of things. Where is the golden egg? Where's the golden egg here?
I think it depends on how much of the customer experience the brand wants to own. Because what you're talking about, again, goes back to customer experience. Customer experience is the heart of everything. Because whatever you're selling, a service, a product, whatever, it's the last person you have a contact with is the person you're going to go back to first, regardless of who manufactured the product. So if my TV breaks, I'm not going to contact Samsung. I'm going to contact the retailer who sold me the TV. Yeah. So I think it's the same with a bottle of shampoo. I'm not going to contact the manufacturer because also I don't expect a response, to be honest with you. But then it also depends on how much the brand wants to own that experience. So I think there's some brands that kind of scream out saying, we want you to tell us stuff, be part of the design of our new products. And I think there you get much more of that trust and connection with the customer. So for me, it's a win because the brands will get more information on what's going right and what's going wrong. And I think what's going wrong is the key to learning. You only learn by failure. But yeah, those brands that don't engage with the customer experience, they're not going to be around long enough because the customer is going to go to somebody who cares or cares about the environment or cares, because everything's about trust these days. You see what's happening with Facebook. People don't trust it. So, people are moving away.
Yeah. Makes sense.
So Sultan has said the issue is that we all want to own the customer, control the conversation while the customer is the owner of the relationship. Couldn't agree more. And the customer will choose with their wallet where they're going to go.
Okay, but I'm going to make this very dynamic. So to the point of Sultan, that's true, right? Also to your point, Brian, if I share my screen very quickly, and I'm not going to give another presentation, don't be afraid, it's all good. But I do have one slide which makes a lot of sense to me, and that's this one, where we basically see that everybody's trying to own that part of the customer, right? We have Starbucks in the hat, obviously is very, very good at it. We have Dollar Shave Club also moving towards that whole goal, being bought by Unilever. But at the same time, we also have financial service coming there. Where do you really think that this will end? Is this going to be like a war where everybody tries to, maintain that relationship, or do we need to work together to win that war against Amazon, Apple, or Google? I know it's a big question, but what are your thoughts about this? And how can you survive if you're just Dollar Shave Club or Starbucks?
It's a good question, and I think it depends on what your purpose is, and are you being true to your purpose? So I think what's missing here is what is the purpose of Starbucks? And it got to be a financial services organization, because I was part of Starbucks when they got it wrong. Back in the 90s, Howard Schultz left, and they had Paul McCartney signed to a record label. They were producing books, they were making movies, and they got away from their core, which was CPG and retail, and they started getting into other stuff, and they lost their way, and the share price dropped to $5. So it nearly took the company down. So I think, you should play where your strengths are. Otherwise, you're going to get distracted, and then where are you going to be left? But it's also looking out for those complementary opportunities where you can maybe slide into another business that is complementary, that is not such a stretch, because you also need to look for the next thing.
Yep. I see a comment coming in from Andrew. Data sharing synchronization is what will change the game. Exactly as you said earlier, Jeroen, as a customer, I want the retailer and the brand to all know my needs and my interaction. So to your point, Brian, earlier, okay, so without talking, let's just forget the GDPR part for a second. Let's keep on air biking, as we say in Holland, luchtfietsen. But Yeah, it's a very inspiring topic because again, everybody wants to own it, right? And um, as you said, you're not going to call Samsung for your television.
Yeah, but I definitely think that there's interesting things about me that Samsung may want to know, like how I use my device. How often is my device not switched on? You know, all of these other things. I don't think they should be switching on the camera on my TV and watching me, but there is limits
No,
to
but
it.
no, but, no, but true point, and everybody sees that urgency to have that conversation, and also the point of Andrew. But at the same time, the only thing that Samsung or whatever those in between manufacturers, brands, or whatsoever, or cities, as I would say, Seoul is like every little, I mean, every big apartment has been branded by Samsung. But anyway, the only thing they do in terms of customer interaction is send you a question. How would you refer us to friends between 0 and 10? So although that's the case, I do believe that if Samsung's going to ask you an email, how are you doing after COVID in these couple of months? Much more qualitative feedback, much more rather than get their results, right? So I mean, if the manufacturers become a bit more human there, I think there could be a point that you want to ask Samsung to stop by and say, "Hey, can you help me?"
I think emotion is something that is going to be one of the next generation of products. Is people are going to have to start connecting with consumers emotionally as
Yeah,
well. The
yeah,
world is getting a softer place. People are starting to care about things, and it's okay to talk about things like the environment and destroying the planet and social rights and all these things. So I
yeah.
think that brands that show that they have a human face and they are showing emotion, I think, and brands that get angry as well and kind of say this
That's
is
it, but not even brands, right? But also people. If you look at the general TV ads you see these days on television about yogurt, about all these, Italian coffee flavors, who literally have no interaction. It's just show off where they just show a video, and there's no social media ad, there's no website. It's just like, hey guys, we need to have impressions. It's the same thing if you start screaming to anybody in the street and just walk away, right? And that's literally, I just don't understand. And that's also obviously coming back to my point. How can you get interaction without even listening, right? And just see customer service as sort of a profit center, or sorry, cost center. So it's everybody understands, to my earlier slide, everybody understands that we need to change something, but nobody really knows how. And yeah, it's interesting to see. At the same time, you see all these medias like TikTok coming into the finance world, right? Coming into the media world. You see the CEO of Disney Live going into TikTok. So everything will merge into each other. That's why it was quite interesting to see that slide, um, to see where it's going. But to your point, it's all about purpose. It's all about where do you want to excel as a company. And at the end, from a consumer perspective, who owns the last mile will eventually, get the most feedback, right?
Yeah, I just want to address Andrew's point. He's just raised on the chat there.
Yeah,
Um, about it must be 10 or 15 years ago, I worked in Starbucks and they were talking about the not DTC, but kind of where there were cups of coffee that were being consumed that were not consumed in the cafes, and they
yeah,
developed situations to go after them. So this was really thinking about this before Nestle even existed with Nespresso. It was literally just going, people drink coffee at home, people drink
yeah,
coffee in the office, people drink
yeah,
coffee on the train, people drink coffee on the airplane. How can we develop products, not now, but in the future? And they literally just looked at everywhere that their product could be sold and then went
yeah.
after it slowly, one at a time, doing it in the right way that was fitting for the branding, etc. So I think D2C is not something that's new. I think
No,
people want to have more share of the pie. And to your point earlier on, Jeroen, I think D2C gives companies, these big companies like Heinz, that direct connection to the customer. It gives them a higher margin because they're not paying all these middlemen. But also there's more than of a direct link from the customer to their product to enable them then to potentially sell other branded products to that customer. But it's expensive. You know, it's D2C. for me in the team I work in, it's part of that whole D2C thing. It really only works when it's part of an omni-channel strategy where the retail bit is experiential and has to be experiential, that drives people into the higher margin, low experience. If you imagine like a graph, your store is at the top of the pyramid, which is an expensive piece of real estate with lots of staff that are giving this great experience. It doesn't generate a huge amount of profit, if any. Then going down to your click, which is very little experience, huge margin, and it is then just getting that balance right, that you're only going to get those clicks if you have this great experience at the beginning of it, and it's moving.
Yeah, the inspiring thing to your point, Brian, is like, yes, the thing we discussed for the last 5 to 10 minutes is true. We all agree about that. But looking after this whole wave of marketplaces, it's only gonna get worse, and worse is obviously quote unquote. But it's with all these marketplaces coming in, this whole fight is already been going on for 20, 30, 40 years, as you mentioned earlier this afternoon. Like, it's all not new. Omnichannel is not new. Like what you literally said, it's only being accelerated. But man, this whole conversation get accelerated because of this whole marketplace discussion, right?
Oh, absolutely. The customer is the key, and some customers do not want to buy anything that's connected to Unilever or Heinz or Starbucks or Apple or any of these big companies. You know, they're going out to these marketplaces to buy something unique. You know, they want to see themselves as that first mover. They want to see themselves with, you know, something that's cool but unbranded, or a brand that nobody's heard of. So I think that that is what a lot of these big companies are afraid of. And, you know, they're already starting to create their own sub brands, or, you know, do a lot more white label stuff. So yeah, I think it's going to move faster, and organizations have to be able to move with the customer and what the customer needs.
Cool. Some good discussions. We had a final comment from Martin. A lot of talk surrounding customer experience is about channels and touch points, but isn't customer centricity a much more integral perspective on how a company should work? Yes, right. I mean, that's evident. That would also address the apparent dichotomy between finance, compliance, and the various commercial departments. Yeah, I agree. Right. I think you can agree more. Right. Have these departments in the whole mix there as well. But should that mean that we, in terms of agile working, that sort of a agile product team should also consist of financial controller or compliance person? That would be interesting to think about, right?
Well, I think this is why Lean and Scrum have also, if they're done properly, and you have cross-functional teams working on these agile projects, you can do things very quickly, and you can manage that finance, compliance, and the different commercial departments at the beginning of the project if you invite the right people in at the beginning, so that they're part of the solution, that they don't become part of the problem later on.
Yeah. So basically what we say, we have to extend agile lean, not just to an IT product or digital product perspective. We also need to, you know, implement them from a business point of view, and also put compliance there once in a while.
And
to make sure
you can get the product to the customer and everything.
How would that look like, right? If you have an agile product team, forget IT. Like, IT never exists. We're not doing this on computers. We're just in a room right now. We're working agile. We have a person from supply chain, compliance, finance, marketing. Wow. I mean, that's such a relief, and a lot of boring calls in the evenings. Anyway, any more questions, guys? We have 16 people now in. Few people are joining. We have another great message from Brian. For larger brand owners, this also includes connecting in-home and out-of-home teams together. Absolutely. I've been working on this with FMCG. It's amazing how little they tend to engage.
It's really true. The amount of times I've asked, how is this connected to what's happening in the supermarket? And that's a different organization, so we don't connect with them. So yeah.
It's interesting.
Really true.
Yeah.
So I think for other people to understand what they mean by in-home and out-of-home, is in-home is more the products that are sold in the supermarket channels, and out-of-home is more stuff that you would buy in theme parks or in more experiential places. So retail is generally seen as being out-of-home, and large-scale big box supermarkets is seen as being in-home.
But talking about this whole conversation, Brian, do you think that Unilever, in the end, Unilever wants to be D2C? If you look in the heart of D2C, they just want to surpass all the big retailers. They just want to have not Jumbo or Albertine stores anymore. They just want to have Unilever stores. Is that eventually the goal of Unilever?
I don't think it's the goal of Unilever. I think it's the goal of most FMCG companies because the margins are getting squeezed by the big box guys all the time. You're giving your product to somebody else to sell. If you have the capability to sell it yourself directly to consumer, why not? It's just they're not experts in it. The Walmarts of this world are experts in that last bit of the consumer. So
that was also my experience when I was when I worked at Dollar Shave Club. It was like 3 months before Dollar Shave Club got bought by Unilever, and we had all these discussions with Unilever. And then it was very funny. It's quite intimate, but it was very funny because like, yeah, but our consumers. I was like, no, wait, you mean the customers, right? So it was like, no, the consumers, because it's different, because we call our and I think for me, and again, I was like, that was 5 years ago or something like that, so I was quite young still, and unexperienced. I was like, why do we, from a very childly thought, why do we name the same customer differently, right? We have the same customer. We have like, and then what happens if we just share a little bit of data, not just from an acquisition perspective, but also from a customer service perspective, and we just name them the same? What happens? And that's exactly what you mentioned, right? With this different mind shift, Unilever was all about creating awareness, media, television, while Dollar Shave was all about, what? Let's point this specific persona and target them very specific on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and tweak that 30 times and see what happens. And of course, that was 5 years ago, right? Everything is already merged, but I always think it's very inspiring to see how everybody, all these different parties, looking into the same persons in terms of consumers or customers. Yeah,
absolutely. But I think now, if you're not connecting your online and digital and physical presence, real estate, physical brick and mortar stores are just not going to be viable going forward. I think after COVID, they're going to need to be bigger with more space. That's going to cost a lot more money. So, there's a lot of efficiency in getting stuff to customers, with just click and collect or click and deliver. So I think brands that want to survive need to have an omni-channel strategy. And it doesn't need to be complicated. It can be, like we said, just using the upstairs dark space that you're paying rent on and just shipping stuff out in the evenings from there.
Yeah, make it simple. We do an assignment right now for a very big real estate owner of about 13 or 14 shopping centers in the Netherlands. And that's very interesting for him to see as well in this whole conversation of who owns that, let's say the customer, because suddenly they need to do something with these queues. So they provide all these stickers to the retailers, they provide the Wi-Fi, but their service provider way of work is becoming much more bigger than just being a real estate company. So they also make the shift into the D2C part here as well, because so it's not just the stores or the brands, it's also the real estate, and it's also the marketplace. So we're not going to solve that problem for now for the next couple of minutes, but it's a very interesting topic to discuss. Do we have any more questions coming in? I see we're the only one with a lot of people in. So if you have any questions for Brian or for myself, feel free. We can talk for hours about this, but
yes,
obviously...
I'm very passionate about this whole subject. But I think this bit talks about the cross-functional teams being involved. I know it's a bit of a joke, but if you can make it happen, do it. I think it's going to speed up your execution a lot and give you a lot less pain.
Yeah, because
I spent a lot of time cleaning up good projects where the wrong people weren't involved at the beginning, and then the compliance issues start to come out, and they say, "You're doing what?" And then you're asked to shut something down that potentially is a fantastic project, and then you've got to do a lot of work with convincing people about how we can do this and still make it.
Well, it's about the balance, right? So again, if you look at my couple of last years, first for Jumbo, you had like 3-5 million people in your store every day, which was great. Then Dollar Shave Club, no stores, 5 million subscriptions. And then we did an assignment last year for tobacco brand. You can't do anything, right? And CLA, the whole legal part is marketing basically, because you can't do shit. So it's pretty funny to see that every company, from what area or what region or what product has their blockers, and whether it's IT, whether it's legal, whether it's compliance. But yeah, it's just, so a good multidisciplinary team could be a key to move forward, actually.
Yeah.
Cool. Let's see if we have more questions coming in, or maybe you want to raise your hand and come up to have a discussion.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. If we haven't really answered your questions correctly, or there's a topic that maybe you'd like to elaborate a little bit on, if you can just raise your hand, then actually we can bring you into the video chat and you can talk a little bit about us for us.
Martijn asks, COVID encouraged short-term thinking, and the ROI of many of these initiatives isn't visible until later. How does one manage that?
Yeah, it's a very good question. I think there's a good piece of this is it's encouraged people to be less risk averse. So do stuff that they potentially wouldn't have greenlit in the past because there was so much red tape to get a project off the ground. And now with COVID, they've just been greenlit to do this quickly, execute quickly. That's always going to make mistakes. But I think if you don't make mistakes, you don't learn. And I think the companies that are overthinking is going to have a problem. So to be honest, I'm a firm believer in getting the right people involved at the beginning, as we've discussed, but just doing it and then fixing it on the go. So better just to, get something out there, get the customer feedback, check, do, adjust. And I think it's about sales at the beginning and then looking at the ROI potentially a little bit later on. But you just need to see if there's a market in this. Once there's a market in it, then you can tweak everything else after that. But the first thing is, does anybody want to buy this product? Is anybody interested in this service?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think looking to my slide earlier, we have different zones that's for people at the same thing also for companies, right? I mean, if you look to the formative phase that people went through, without repeating myself, that's exactly the same also for companies. So companies had the fear zone. What is going on? We have no clue, right? The learning zone. Yeah, we need to do something with this, right? So we need to learn. And then maybe the growth or action zone. Maybe the action zone is the most important one. What is the company going to do? And I'm not going to say if you're KLM and you're going to say, okay, because of the whole COVID-19, we keep our planes on the ground for another month because we don't think it's safe for you. Obviously, that won't happen because turnover needs to be made. But this is the action zone right now. We're not there yet, but we really value companies or brands that make a stand here and make a proper stand. And that's very, very, very careful, right? I mean, you saw, for example, regards to the whole Black Lives Matter discussion, you saw companies actually talking about it, that they are also part of this movement. I mean, that's not going to work, right? It could be also be done very, very bad. But again, now with COVID on the way for 3-4 months, you could make a statement, and which is not just short-term thinking. And again, good on your question, Martijn. I mean, ROI, of course, everybody's is focused on that short-term ROI part, but I don't think consumers eat that.
Does that answer your question, Martijn, or is there?
I think some brands do make risk, right? Do take risk, right? I mean, okay, that's good. We have 45 minutes left, so take your time, Martijn. No, just kidding. I mean, some brands do take risk, right? Adidas 4 months ago said, you know what, we're not going to advertise on television anymore. We just don't do it anymore. I think you have to be brave to make those decisions, right? And I think the better companies making those decisions, the more, the better it is. Making a stand. People love that. Look at Patagonia, right? Patagonia is a good example of a brand who just has their purpose at the top of everything, right?
I would also challenge something. ROI is an interesting one because I think it's very interesting that all of these companies have pulled advertising out of Facebook, because
absolutely.
Facebook dollar of advertising spend, it is phenomenal how good they are at what they do. So these companies that are pulling advertising on Facebook, that is a huge cost for them, because now they're going to have to quadruple or tenfold their spend on advertising to get the same reach, because Facebook were phenomenal at what they did. Like it or hate it, they did a good job at it. So I think the ROI is not always the most important thing. I think doing the right thing is becoming more important now than the ROI.
But this Facebook thing, Brian, is that a statement? I mean, it absolutely fits the brand purpose of Ben and Jerry as a first brand to say, hey, we're going to do it. But obviously Unilever followed, some other big companies followed.
Yeah, but Unilever did threaten it last year. So last year, Unilever already threatened Facebook. If they didn't get their act together, they were going to pull it. And they didn't, so they pulled it. But it's also, who do you want to be associated with, and what do you want your advertising to appear beside? I think it's also something with YouTube as well. If your advert is in the middle of an inappropriate video content, you know, you got to be careful who you rub up against as well, because it can taint your brand.
Yeah, what I found is fascinating within this whole Facebook discussion is that there was a developer working on the compliance department, or compliance department, or sort of a block department or whatsoever, customer feedback department. And he worked there for 2 years and didn't feel like he was taken seriously in his sprints. So he quit it, and he just put an Instagram message on his personal Instagram, and it literally got shared millions of times, that a developer within Facebook compliance team didn't feel that they did enough to do it. So it's quite funny to see how one person can, with a lot of other complaints, can elevate this discussion into what happens today. But is it a keeper, or do you think it's sort of a light statement, and in the end we can't really work without Facebook?
I think Facebook is hit its peak, and I think it's going to start to go down anyway. So I think the people that are on Facebook are not your future consumer. I think they're your kind of, and the slowing down consumer. But there's a lot of people there. It has a huge reach, but I think it's I think if Facebook get their act together, they'll keep the business, because it is an efficient way to advertise. If they don't get their act together, Coca-Cola, Unilever, all these other companies they can't go back, because now they've made this statement. If they go back and there's been no change, it's going to make them look like hypocrites.
Well, then they need to have a hell of a PR company, Facebook, to get out of this, right? So Martijn, another question, devil's advocate. Aren't a lot of companies too rigid to pull this off long term? I fear many will fall once we get out of this crisis phase, because they're not fundamentally changing. Not trying to be skeptic, but the inner working of companies aren't fast moving as some people, especially in this chat, would like.
Yeah, having worked in Starbucks, which was like an oil tanker to try and get change, and now in Unilever, where it is difficult, but if you're in the right team, you can do certain things. But you're part of the massive one. But yeah, it's always a challenge. I think companies want to move faster, but they are risk averse as well. And a lot of them, because they're public companies, it's difficult. And Andrew, I'd like to thank you for your input as well before you go.
Yeah, absolutely.
Unless the house is burning, things will change slowly. I think the house is on fire now for a lot of organizations. I think we're going to see the impact of COVID over the next few months. I think this is just the beginning. But yeah, I think this is the kick that a lot of companies have needed. And those ones that change slowly will have a slow recovery. Those ones that move quickly will have a quicker recovery.
Cool. I think this reminds me of the classic Nokia speech. Thank you, Martijn. I think this is it, right? I mean, we're happy to have some more questions, of course, but we don't want to keep your Thursday afternoon.
Companies need to do tomorrow.
Oh, that's a great one.
It's a fantastic question. I'm not a CEO. I'm not a leader of one of these big organizations, so I can just say, from my opinion, and this is just my opinion, I think you need to embrace cross-functional lean working. So your agile, quick working has to be part of what you do. I think you need to not just talk about having the customer at the heart of what you do, but really have the customer at the heart of what you do. and have that feedback loop where you're actually listening to what they're saying rather than relying on these intermediaries or this sample group. I love the fact that these companies rely so much on questionnaires from market research companies. But how many customers have actually ever filled in one of those, and is it really representative of the real customer? But the amount of credence that's given to these things, and I think embracing technology. It doesn't need to be expensive. There's a lot of really cool stuff out there that can be done with digital phones. There's a lot of really amazing startups internationally, not necessarily just in Europe. I think it's global thinking about technology. I've seen some incredible stuff coming out of Ukraine at the moment for fashion industries. There's amazing things coming out of Bangladesh. There's great stuff out there that doesn't need to be necessarily very expensive.
I also have three things, and this wasn't rehearsed before we go to the question, but three things. So I think the most important part is what an organization should do is to bring human KPIs within the day-to-day boardroom, right? Because we all focus on turnover, we all focus on revenue. Yes, we all talk about customer experience, but there's no single human KPI at a daily boardroom or weekly boardroom meeting that makes people happy. They don't know where they steer on. At Dollar Shave Club, we had a CSAT of 97% for 3 years. So that doesn't say anything. So I really believe that that there should be at least not just a customer, sorry, a CXO, Chief Experience Officer, Chief Customer Officer. It's all about, is this the KPI for the organization to steer on? And that's not just for the day-to-day companies. It's also for projects. If you want to land an app, is there a human KPI in there? No, we just need to deliver the app. Yes, but when are people actually happy? So that's one. Two is IT should be part of every department. A big hiccup these days is that, for example, you see employee experience. So HR organizations are going to build their own IT stack with their own little apps and best of breed solutions. We have marketing with their credit card taking on these email solutions or beacon solutions. We have supply chain working on IoT. So everybody is working on their own little stuff. And if that IT organization is not fixed, it doesn't move you any further. A good human KPI, Sultan, is it doesn't really matter. I can say a lot of things, right? I can say NPS, I can see CSAT. It's all about an aligned KPI, a customer success KPI, where every department is being happy. So if we say it could be CSAT, could be NPS, whether it's chipped and tailored to the daily reality of your consumer, right? The third part is redefine the brand across several touch points. So brand is not built. A lot of brands are not built to be published on all these touch points of today. A lot of brands are still built for television, direct mail, or maybe an email because we need to have a logo on the right up top. The brand. So if you really want to do aesthetic or what's the name again? Not sure, but create a brand that works on several touch points. You can create a great music song right now today. Hopefully it will become a hit. But if you combine it together with a TikTok dance, it will accelerate you much quicker and quicker and quicker. So really think beyond touch points if you create a brand. Coming back to your point, Martijn, I often talk about customer value, not as what a customer is worth, but as in what value is being created for the customer and how to measure that. Phew. Yeah. That's the billion-dollar question, right? Brian?
No, it is, but I think that there are ways to ask for feedback from your customers, and it doesn't need to be complicated. I remember that I used to have this stuff when I ran Starbucks in Czech Republic. I wanted to build this customer ritual. So if a customer gave us feedback, I gave them free coffee for 1 month. So they could come every single day and get a free coffee every day for a month. And then I would follow up with that customer on what their experience was coming every single day for a month, because most customers are coming once a month or once a week or whatever like that. We all think that there's regular customers that come every day, but they're like gold dust. But when you got a customer, then the amount of things that they told you that we were doing great or things we should do better. But again, it was just one customer. But it's about looking at what does the customer need And are we satisfying it, or are we just getting close and we're the best alternative?
Yeah, and to your point, what you see a lot is that obviously a CEO, CMO, whatever, says, guys, customer experience, everything. We should put it in all our year agendas. Everything is customer experience. So what happens? Every single department within the organization will measure it on their own way. So you have CSAT coming from there, you have NPS coming from there, you have customer satisfaction coming from an app development. It's not aligned. I remember at Jumbo once in the board meeting, we had talked about social sentiment with all the directors, and we had like 4 directors opening up the laptop and said, hey guys, our social sentiment is 75%. Hey, really? Mine is 85%. So it's I don't think it's specifically about a KPI, or it's all about, again, make it one truth for for the whole organization internally, and bring that to stores, to and all the touch points facing for consumers. And for example, Coolblue, make it practical. Brian, you know Coolblue a lot.
I love Coolblue.
Yeah, what I mean, they have one big obsession, is that the whole organization is only happy if customers are happy, right? From a store perspective, from an FAQ perspective, from an unboxing experience perspective, they need to have a KPI inside of their company that is at least aligned for a lot of people, right?
But it's an interesting question Martin is talking about, is what value is being created for the customer, but surely the customer defines that, not us as an organization. Because the value is different, and
That's true.
Even a shitty experience is an experience. It means I'm never going to go back and the brand is not right for me, but it is still a customer experience. So we can kind of say we're creating customer experiences every day. They're terrible, but we're still creating customer experiences. So I think it's also about how do we really measure that value creation for the customer, and that's about listening to them. They have to define that themselves. Surely.
Yeah, especially if you take that value part over time, right? Value is not being created if you buy something at Coolblue today, having an NPS question tomorrow. The value is being created of going on holiday in 3 weeks and have that surround system with me on the beach and create a great moment. So it's not just a matter of a one-off, right? It's more like, how can you measure the product lifecycle usage of a customer over time? But again, we're going to make it too complex maybe right now, but it's interesting to see.
But I think also, just on your point, I think the simplest way to measure it is, do they come back? So your measure should be return visits, and having some kind of CRM system that measures your return customers. Because if it's not a good experience and it's not value, they're not going to come back. They're going to go to somewhere else to get that value. So if we have some way of measuring that, and there are ways of measuring it now with technology. I've seen where there's systems that can ping IP addresses. That's all GPRDs, it's compliant. But that can tell you if the same customer is coming back, how often they're coming back. There are ways of measuring it, but I think repeat business is a simple one.
Yep. Yeah, that's a good point. Make it simple. Make it easy to understand for everybody. Cool. What would be return customers or lead generator as well? Some brands are designed around one-off purchases.
That's true. I'm not buying a house every day.
No, but I mean that's a great example. Real estate agency. If they would act as a retailer, I mean, what kind of services they could provide you for the last couple of years, when the moment you start buying your house, right? They know that you potentially get a child. They know, I mean, again, not going too far, but there are a lot of opportunities for them to do much more and more than just selling you a house, right?
Definitely. But I think it's good about this lead generators. You talked about this, measuring how customers feel about your brand and will they be net promoters. So I think this net promoter is also quite key, and how customers see your brand and will they talk, positively about what you do. I mean, I tell everybody about Coolblue. I just love it. I will never buy from another online electronics retailer again, because I'm now I'm just bought into what they do and how they make me feel.
Yeah, what I love specifically, personally, Brian, on Coolblue is that they do it one step at a time, right? So besides having this online e-commerce store, they also said last year, you know what? Buying a wash machine is a bitch. because if you buy a wash machine right now into this whatever store, and you live in a flat, normally your wash machine is one high up. You always have to make an appointment and shit. You have to stay at home for at least a day. And they literally took that example of buying a wash machine and they optimized that into this 15-minute slot. We bring it to you. We take your wash machine. We are with 2 people. We just make it easier. We're cheaper in price, bring more value, and the service is there. So they just literally did that within almost 2 or 3 months. They had like 35% market share within Netherlands and Belgium only on the wash. I like that approach, right? It's just like take that single thing, take that single friction, and optimize it like nobody ever did before. And yeah, it's a very interesting way of working, actually. Martijn and Jeroen, real estate is a great example. They focus is almost exclusively on the period in which someone buys a house, and there's so much more potential than that. Absolutely. I remember selling a house last year, on not a good reason in the south. I had this local real estate agent. He put everything on Facebook and into his website, which probably has like 200 views a year. Then at the same time, he was uploading it into Funda, right? And he sent me his in-log codes of Funda to see what data is coming out of Funda, because obviously everybody's on Funda. So I had this conversation with him. I was like, do you really believe that you just, oh no, why do you have your website? I mean, do you actually, have the ambition to become the next Funda? I was like, how do you see that for the next 20 years? And I think that was a very good discussion on, they have no clue, right? It's the same conversation hotels have with Booking.com. Well, Booking obviously got a slap in the face after the last couple of months, but it's very interesting to see of which angle they're actually gonna attack. Real estate in the US is a lot about content, right? All these real estate agents in Florida has super rich and famous Instagram followers and stuff like that. But again, everybody's trying to swim upwards to have that own conversation with that consumer. But in the end, the platforms eventually will win, ? I don't know. We'll see.
But I think it's a really good point that Martijn has made, is there is so much more they could do. Because you really get to know that real estate agent. They really get to know everything about you, what your kids are doing, you and your partner, what your interests are. They know everything about you. And then it's gone. And then you never speak to that person again for maybe 10, 15 years. And they have all great insight, relationship, you trust them. What else?
Well, eventually, obviously, it will happen that Amazon knows you best or Bol.com knows you best, and they can provide real estate services to you.
Yeah.
Right? Maybe. I mean, obviously, that's it's interesting.
My nephew works for AWS, which is Amazon Web Services, and they're just developing tools and systems every day. And they're just incredible at how quickly they're able to churn out products that consumers need. And I think that they will have an app for everything.
They will, right?
Into Amazon's data sets. So yeah, I think it's coming.
Yeah, they will disrupt quickly. AWS is a very, very big part of Amazon, right? And a lot of people think that it's being built because of the infrastructures they built for other companies, but it actually is built by themselves, as with all these learnings, and it's unbelievable to see how important that infrastructure runs Netflix, Booking, and all these great companies.
I think it's what you said earlier on about having IT at the center of everything. He's a systems architect, so he goes to these clients and he builds the systems for what they need. That obviously going to sell the Amazon product to them, but it's just making sure that everything is integrated, everything works. They've got the best they can do, but he's basically like going to an architect to design your house. He's an architect.
Yeah, it's the same. Yeah, that's a great metaphor. That's exactly the same.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool, guys. As we said, we can talk for hours. Do you have any more questions for now, or some feedback? Sultan goes to his first employees, the kids. Completely understand. They're probably already behind the iPad for 2 hours. At least in my case. No, he's not here today.
I'm surprised mine hasn't burst into the room already.
Yeah, maybe he's listening. Maybe he's listening with a glass on the door. It's like, "Hey,
Probably.
my father speaks great things."
Is there any other topics you think